20 years ago, using the internet was unfamiliar to the majority of the population. And at that point, very few could have predicted that the industry would grow into the colossal global networking medium that it is today. Lifelong astronomer and professor at the University of Arizona, Chris Impey, argues in his book Beyond that space tourism would become what the internet was 20 years ago. Like the internet, space tourism would blossom into a multi-billion-dollar industry, becoming available to the general public and revolutionizing the human experience. Impey claims that within the next 5 years, going into space will no longer be a luxury of the government and elite, but for nearly all people, just as the internet is today. But there's a long way to go before you or I will be traveling beyond Earth's orbit. Simply put, space tourism is a commercial industry, private or public, where people purchase tickets to be brought into the extraterrestrial world. This market has plenty of room for growth in the coming years as a result of projected public interest. The only trouble will be avoiding asteroids, like costs and regulations. But because we could be experiencing these feats in the near future, today we will examine the origins of modern-day space tourism, the industry-changing applications and implications leading to a dynamic population shift. Because as Forbes News stated, on July 26th of 2017, space tourism is going to be the next most revolutionary thing to change the human race. Forever. In much the same way as the internet took time to become popular among society, space tourism is getting through that process right now, warranting us to examine the origins of modern-day space tourism, which involves first the early stages and second, the government restrictions that ensued. The origin of space tourism was the purchase of a ticket by United States millionaire Dennis Tito on April 28th of 2001, according to Space.com, which monitors all international space accomplishments. But even in these early stages, there were some inhibitors slowing down these accomplishments. For instance, as BBC News noted in their May 9th, 2017 report on the progress of space tourism, Virgin Galactic, a private space company, suffered a fatal accident in 2014, just one of nearly a dozen the market has seen. After this occurrence, the company lost an abundance of followers and faced major financial setbacks. These occurrences, as well as the public memory of the Challenger explosion, have been preventing public interest from reaching what it was at one point projected to be. Next, space tourism was slowed as a result of necessary government regulations put into place by our government as a safety precaution. Stephen Hoag wrote of some of these policies in his report for the Nebraska Law Review of 2007, titled Legal Aspects of Space Tourism, which highlights that most United States companies currently abide by the Spaceship One model, stating that all space tourist trips must have a detachable rocket returns to the location of liftoff. Additionally, as long as waivers are signed 90 days prior to the trip, these companies may assume as much or as little liability for the safety of the passengers, provided the passenger still wishes to travel. The likely reason behind such forcible government actions is pointed out by Space Daily, updated daily, which states that currently most United States companies are abiding by this Spaceship One model because as space tourism flight increases, so does the number of deadly occurrences, and consequently the government needs to have a stronghold. But they did so with the Office of Commercial Space Transportation by creating the Space Launch Amendments Act, which left diction capable of allowing the government to halt all operations at any sign of a hiccup. Understanding now that the journey is on the rise, it will be very interesting to begin exploring the applications. First, by examining how space tourism, the market, is growing today, and second, by examining the current innovations for rockets. Currently today, there are many people flying above space, and there are actually 514 of them who have surpassed the Kármán line, a point 62 miles above Earth that marks the beginning of space. Of these over 500 travelers, the vast majority were astronauts, but space tourists actually account for 37 of them. These travels, when they began, were occurring about once every 3 months, or only 4 times a year. But today, people are surpassing that same Kármán line about once every other week. But in addition to these travels increasing in their frequency, there's also new companies sprouting as a result. Specifically, Trend in Tech, a news agency who reports on new inventions, mentioned that entrepreneurs Ted Sudner and Nikolay Mazev co-founded a new company called the Final Frontier Design. These two are currently hitting the jackpot on this multi-billion-dollar industry with what is serving as the likely suit of apparel for travelers in this fresh market. But in addition to today's travel, one can also note that current innovations for rockets are revolutionizing this adventure. Because in order to come up with a new way to fly masses of people around the globe, costs are going to have to be lowered, and that will take time. But multi-billionaire Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, decided that they were going to target the least efficient part of these spacecrafts, the rockets themselves. They stated in a teleconference to NBC News on April 4th of 2017 that they're currently creating massive Falcon Heavy rockets as part of their future Dragon ship design. These rockets would detach from the spaceship and return to the location of liftoff, in accordance with the Spaceship One model mentioned earlier, with a caveat: reuse up to 12 times. If this initiative falls into place, our world could be forever changed, as people will continue to fly around the globe at far less the cost. Knowing now that the market is on the rise, it will be very interesting to begin exploring the implications leading to a dynamic population shift, by understanding first how space tourism divides our classes, but second, how it can unite us as well. The division in our world is going harder and harder each and every day, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he decided to make the space race a legislative priority, took it upon himself to unite American interest in space. But today we don't have that same unifier within our governmental system, and therefore it's continuing to tear us apart instead of building us up. The aforementioned NBC article posits that SpaceX has an even more ambitious goal, of sending colonists to Mars by 2020. If Musk is able to accomplish this feat in 2020 or in the years to come, it will be a phenomenal feat for human history, but only for those able to afford the trip. Because as an AV Jobs article from February of 2017 states, when flying began to become an integral part of American society in the early 20th century, it was only available to the upper class. That same phenomena will occur with space tourism and going to Mars. The bottom line is, space tourism allows the digital divide to continue to occur in our world. Those who already have access to great technology will extend their access beyond our borders, while those without it will be left struggling to survive on the basic needs for survival in third world countries. Though while space tourism could initially divide our classes, it could end up uniting us as well. When Franklin D. Roosevelt decided to make that space race a legislative priority, he affirmed that we would land men on the moon within the decade. While FDR was not around to witness that feat, it did become a reality. And in much the same way that he united American interest in space then, someone like Elon Musk could unite American interest in space now. While that AV Jobs article stated that it would be tremendously expensive in the short term for people to be able to fly, as time continues to progress, those costs will completely dissolve. Elon Musk's company is going to take the initiative to start dropping these prices to the middle class. And we can see that he's already taken this initiative on with Tesla, a company that he has now made available to the general public. The bottom line is, if Elon Musk and others around the world are going to continue to allow our world to stay interconnected, face-to-face interaction will not die out in our society, but rather will continue to thrive each and every day. Throughout all of human evolution, the idea of what was beyond Earth has shifted. And now that scientists are coming through a breakthrough of what is actually beyond Earth, we might be able to find out for ourselves what truly is there. So today we began by examining the origins of modern-day space tourism, the industry-changing applications and implications leading to a dynamic population shift. So in much the same way as the internet took time to get popular among society, space tourism is doing so as well, shorter than we think.